Welcome to Thursday, the 30th day of October, 2025. Your Day with a Podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at WyomingAdvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, not very scary. Certainly not a very scary picture there on the right. I think those guys are ready not only for another walk, but trick-or-treating on Friday. And we'll take a look again at the trick-or-treat forecast. Nice today. Just nice late October weather. And that's going to go into most of Friday, except Friday we're going to cool down a little bit, especially along and east of the Continental Divide, as a backdoor cold front will come out of south central Canada and the Dakotas and will push some cooler air westward towards the Continental Divide. But there will be very little weather with it, so it's just going to be a little bit chilly. Pacific air floods the zone starting this weekend and into a good part of next week. So if it's Pacific air, you're going to have temperatures that are going to be mild, and you're going to have temperatures that are going to be at or above average for multiple days. So November starts off very gently. When will it get colder and stay colder? Well, we're going to examine that because we're getting some clues on when things turn to, let's say, more like early winter than fall. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Now, there's a very wintry scene on the west side of the Tetons, looking up Teton Canyon there. A lot of snow beginning to really add up in some of the northwest mountains of Wyoming on the Pacific Northwest mountains. If you see what looks like blowing snow, that's actually smoke from a controlled burn down a little bit lower. Good day for a controlled burn with that snow cover and not much wind. Also enjoying the nice weather is Valentine, the pot-bellied pig, walking around the haunts of Story, Wyoming, enjoying the sunshine. You can see Valentine squinting, looking into the sun. Lots of beautiful sunshine yesterday, not only in the Intermountain West and the high plains, but back into Yosemite. Wow, beautiful shot there. Another beautiful shot of the colors in the sky, and nice shot up there at the Miracle Mile. Along the North Platte River, you can see just how good the visibility is. That's what happens when you don't have any forest fire activity of any consequence really anywhere in the west at the moment. Beautiful cirrus clouds yesterday. A lot of you may have noticed them, and a great shot there by Jan of the cirrus clouds coming through the region, and another great shot of that up around the Casper area yesterday. And then a chevron shape. I think this might be some contrails, not sure, but you can see the chevron shape the clouds are making right there in the North Platte Valley yesterday. Satellite photos don't show much. We do have a swirl of clouds up here in Saskatchewan with an upper level low. This is the upper level low that will cause the backdoor cold front as we get into the day on Friday. But right now it's going to stay up there before heading southeast tonight and tomorrow. But the western part of the United States, there's just not much going on. We've got some weather out in the Pacific that'll stay out there for a little bit longer. Where's Melissa? Well, Melissa now heading out to sea, weakening, and hopefully we'll go out to sea and continue to weaken here in the days ahead. Now, speaking of Melissa, now, I don't spend a lot of time on things like hurricanes in a landlocked state like I live in. You just don't talk about them very much unless they might impact the western United States a little bit. But one podcast and YouTube channel I really would encourage you to subscribe to and watch is Tim's Forecast Lab. Tim Vasquez's Forecast Lab is an excellent resource, an excellent podcast to go into a deeper dive into things like Melissa, the modeling, the structure of the hurricane, as you can see here. A good idea to check out Tim's podcast page there on YouTube, and that's someone else to follow to learn more about the weather, how it works. Tim's got a long storied history and a lot of experience that he shares freely with everybody. So check Tim's podcast page out there. As we go ahead and take a look at what's happening, there's that upper low in Saskatchewan heading into Manitoba, and the colder air is filtering in behind it. High pressure broadly covering the west coast, giving us that fair weather. But tomorrow, notice what happens here and what happens here. The two consolidate. This one kind of dumbbells up into the northeastern United States. This is what drags in a pocket of cooler air right here behind it and sends it southward. If this was January or December or early February, you'd be talking about some really cold air. And it is cooler. but it's not a huge push, and there's very little moisture associated with it. So here are temperatures for 6 p.m. Mountain Time. You can see that the air temperatures are certainly a little on the chilly side, but they're not bad. And we don't have any precipitation in the forecast. That's your cloud prediction for 6 p.m. on Friday. So you'll see some clouds up there in the Dakotas, down there in the southern plains a little bit, that along that frontal boundary, but there's just really no significant precipitation in the offing. And look at the wind speeds. These are the wind speeds at 6 o'clock. So yeah, it's a little bit breezy up here, closer to the frontal boundary, but look at this. Single-digit wind speeds Friday evening in usually perennially windy places this time of year. So going to be a good evening for trick-or-treating, just a little bit on the cool side. As we go into next week, we're just going to be talking a lot about a Pacific jet stream flow that's going very straight across the U.S. So you're not allowing any of that. See all that blue up there? There's a lot of blue up there in the northern latitudes. The cold air is there. It's building and getting deeper. But fast west to east flow of air will just flood the zone, flood the lower 48 with Pacific air. Now, along this boundary, up along the U.S.-Canadian border, there will be little disturbances that will kick up the wind, might produce a little bit of shower activity along that black line I just drew. But generally speaking, you can see that a lot of the U.S. just not going to have much weather heading into the weekend and into early next week, and probably through the middle of next week. Now, late next week, these systems up here will start to push frontal boundaries further eastward off the Pacific and into the Rockies. This is especially true sometime around Thursday and Friday of next week. Some type of frontal system will come through. That'll be followed by another one a couple of days later, late next weekend. However, the majority of this forecast for probably the next 7 days, there's really a whole lot of nothing going on weather-wise. Now let's talk about when it's going to get colder and when it's going to stay colder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to step you through the next 4 weeks and look at the picture on a very rough scale, just generally giving you the big picture items. I'm going to show you these 500 millibar maps from the European, what's called the European weeklies. This model updates every day and tries to go out for 4 weeks. So it's sticking its neck out a little bit, but you can see what the general trend in the overall pattern in North America and the Northern Hemisphere is going to do. Where you see blue, think of where the low pressure systems are going to want to hang out the most. And this is where we are on November 10th. And for a lot of the last few weeks, we have predominantly had a low or low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska, which has been producing storms up there, sending our frontal systems through here occasionally. But you've noted that they come through, but they don't stay. They're in and out very quickly. They bring a change in the weather, but they don't hang around. And we have a nice rebound with temperatures like what we're going to see here. So when you predominantly have low pressure here, the jet stream is going to want to be like this more often than not. And that generally, where you see the yellow colors, means you're going to more often than not have high pressure, more often than not going to have low pressure and in these blue areas. The white areas mean you're kind of in that neutral territory. So this takes us through the 10th of November. It doesn't mean fronts won't come through. It's just that they won't linger. So this is looking out a little past 10 days. And that's why the forecast looks like this for temperatures. If you look at the temperature range, the anomaly, from November 4th to November 11th, the overall temperature anomaly is dominated by Pacific air. You can see that. So temperatures for a lot of the U.S. going to be above average during that week. And that's a good part of why next week we're going to be so, well, quiet weather-wise. Now, as we get into Thanksgiving week, so this leads us right up to Thanksgiving. Notice the blue now is going further westward, and the high pressure ridge is further westward along the west coast. So the jet stream will start to be doing this, starting taking dips. And so once we get into that time range of after the 10th of November, things begin to get a little bit different. So the blue in the week of November 10th looks like this. As we get to Thanksgiving week, it backs up, and that's what temperatures look like. So if we look at basically the Thanksgiving week, anywhere you see white In the European model, it's going to be colder than average. And you see the blue? So this means we start to see Pacific systems come in a little bit more robustly and further south, bringing in the colder temperatures. Notice the temperature anomaly in Canada. See a lot of bright colors there. This doesn't mean it won't be cold in Canada, but you're starting to displace southward higher latitude air further south latitude. And so when it's cold in the U.S., you get the red in Canada. Now, if you have blue in Canada and the U.S. at the same time, then that's Katie bar the door. So that means as we get to the middle of the month into Thanksgiving week, the weather's going to get more active. It's going to get colder. Looking all the way up here to December 4th, this is retreating further westward, the low. The high is also retreating further westward. So now you're getting the dips. You see the blue here? This is a very cold look for the United States as we get into this time period. So basically, days preceding Thanksgiving into early December, that's when things turn. That's when it gets colder and stays colder. And look at the temperature anomaly. There's the cold. And for the European model to see this much blue, that says something this far out. So we definitely see this. And this is something that the European weekly model has been showing for, well, at least a couple of weeks now. It's been very persistent at showing this change in the weather pattern by then. And as we go all the way out to the middle of December, now we're really sticking our necks out. The high pressure ridge, the colors right here, when you have that ridge there, the U.S. is in the fridge. So as we get into basically, I would say roughly around the 20th or a little bit before the 20th of November, up to this period of time, that's when we're going to see a more persistently cold pattern. Snow chances go up, temperatures go down. And that's something we'll just keep an eye on for you. In the short term, though, a whole lot of nothing really of any consequence. And there you can see pushing out another week into that second week of December. It's colder for a lot of the U.S. as temperatures across a lot of the United States basically forecasted to be colder than average. So that's something that's interesting, something that we'll keep an eye on for you. Have a good Thursday.